Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going back in time, back to the Tudor era.
Ooh, fun.
A world of royalty and intrigue and,
Scandal.
yeah, a little bit of scandal.
Of course.
You know,
I gotta have it.
you've sent us a ton of material about Catherine Howard.
One of Henry VIII's 6 wives.
Yes, one of the 6.
That's it.
And it seems like you're really interested in understanding her beyond just like the typical, good time girl label.
Right.
So we have an expert here with us to kind of get to the bottom of all of it.
I think you'll be surprised by what we uncover.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's unpack this.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Our main source today is an interview with Gareth Russell,
Okay.
author of Young and Damned and Fair, The Life of Catherine Howard at the Court of Henry VIII.
Catchy title.
It is catchy.
I like it.
He makes a really interesting point right from the beginning.
Okay.
A lot of what we think we know about Catherine is actually filtered through like a Victorian lens.
That's right. The Victorians were quite fond of, using history for moral instruction.
For sure.
Especially when it came to young women.
Absolutely.
Lots of lessons to be learned from the past.
So how does that Victorian influence, really shape how we understand Catherine?
Well, it really colors how we view her early relationships.
Okay.
Particularly with Henry Mannix, her music teacher,
Okay.
and Frances Dereham.
Okay. And those are the relationships often used to kind of paint her as either like a victim of abuse or
Right.
as someone with a
Yeah.
more of a reckless past.
A bit of a wild child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Russell kind of challenges those assumptions.
He does.
He wants us to look the social context.
Yeah, the bigger picture.
The social context of Tudor England.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, for example, the idea that Mannix and Dereham were so much older than Catherine and therefore these predatory figures,
Right.
that's not really supported by the evidence.
No, not necessarily. It's not as clear-cut as we often think.
So not as clear-cut as some of these historical accounts would want us to believe.
Not at all. In fact, they were probably a lot closer in age
Oh, really?
than traditionally portrayed.
Mhm.
Russell actually argues that Catherine's relationship with Mannix probably ended because she used her higher social standing to break things off.
Wow.
Yeah.
That suggests a lot more agency on
Right.
Catherine's part than we usually hear about.
For sure.
What about her relationship with Dereham?
Well, that one is described as more intense,
Okay.
maybe even a little possessive on Deram's side,
Okay.
but Russell still presents it as a consensual relationship.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, he doesn't paint Dereham as the most
Yeah.
emotionally mature.
But sure, individual.
That's one way to put it.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah, a little bit.
Especially when you consider that, Catherine's trying to move on with her life at court.
Right.
And Dereham keeps trying to insert himself
Yeah.
back into the picture.
After they've clearly parted ways, makes you wonder what his motivations really were.
Definitely raises some questions.
Here's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
There are no confirmed portraits of Catherine.
Interesting.
It's wild to think about,
It is.
given how obsessed we are today
I know, right?
with royal portraits.
Everybody wants a picture.
I know.
It's true.
It makes you think about how much visual representations shape our perception
Oh, they absolutely do.
of historical figures.
Right.
Would we see Catherine differently if we had a universally accepted image of her?
Yeah, it's a question worth pondering.
I think so.
Yeah.
Russell actually debunks some commonly misattributed portraits in his book.
Oh, really?
There's one in particular that you see all the time when you search for Catherine online,
I think I know the one you're talking about.
but he thinks it's actually Jane Seymour's sister.
Oh, wow. Elizabeth.
Talk about a case of mistaken identity.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Throws a wrench into things.
It really does. And it shows how even seemingly objective historical evidence
You think you can trust it.
can be misleading.
But you can't always.
So we're left with this visual mystery when
Right.
it comes to Catherine,
It's a bit of enigma.
which I have to say adds to her mystique.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
It's intriguing.
So before we get to her time as queen,
Okay.
we have to talk about her path to the throne.
Right.
It was a whirlwind.
It was.
Romance, ambition, danger.
All the ingredients.
It had it all.
Yeah.
And we can't forget Thomas Culpeper,
Oh, no.
the man she fell for before catching the eye of Henry VIII.
Before Henry.
Right.
Wow.
A gentleman to the king's privy chamber, no less.
Right in the thick of it.
Their early romance gives us this little glimpse
I love a good glimpse.
into that glittering yet treacherous world
It's always a little treacherous.
of the Tudor court.
Ugh. You gotta watch your back.
You do.
Yeah.
Love could be a weapon,
Oh, yeah.
but it could also be a liability. And as we go deeper, we'll see how those dynamics play out
I'm ready.
in Catherine's life,
Yeah,
leading to moments of great happiness,
that's good.
but also ultimately contributing to her tragic downfall.
Right.
So
We'll get there.
we'll get there.
Yeah, but first.
Okay, so we've talked about the myths surrounding Catherine's early life,
Right, all those early relationships.
but what about her time as queen?
Yeah, what about it?
I'm so used to the good time girl narrative that, like, I'm ready for something
Oh, yeah.
to be surprised.
Get ready to be surprised.
Okay.
Because there's actually evidence that suggests that Catherine was a pretty capable,
Well,
even dignified queen.
what kind of evidence are we talking about?
Well, for starters,
Okay.
Russell highlights accounts from foreign ambassadors who were at court, and they were really impressed by Catherine.
Oh, wow.
They commended her on her grace and her understanding of courtly etiquette.
So she wasn't just, like,
No,
playing a part.
she knew what she was doing.
She knew how to navigate that
She did.
complex world.
She got it.
Hmm.
And it goes beyond just good manners.
Okay.
Russell shares this anecdote about Catherine preparing for a Christmas visit from Anne of Cleves.
Oh,
And she consults with both the Lord Chamberlain
wow.
and the Lord Chancellor
Right.
to make sure that everything goes smoothly.
That's not just being polite. That's
Right.
being strategic.
That's knowing how to work the system.
Wow, I hadn't heard that before.
It's a good story.
It would have been so easy to just ignore Anne,
Right.
given their history.
Totally.
But Catherine chose, like, a much more
Yeah, she
diplomatic approach,
Yeah.
shows real maturity and, like, a good understanding of the political landscape.
She was savvy.
So she was a lot more savvy
Yeah,
than she's often given credit for.
much more.
Okay, so while Russell praises Catherine's, like, public persona as queen,
Okay.
he does admit that her management of the royal household
Right.
wasn't always perfect.
Not everything's perfect.
Right.
There were a few hiccups here and there.
What happened?
Well,
Did she get a bad Yelp review
not quite.
from a disgruntled courtier?
Not quite, but apparently she did have a tendency to play favorites
Oh,
among her ladies-in-waiting,
okay.
which, ruffled some feathers.
Yeah, you can't do that.
And there are also some accounts of her being less than kind to her maids when she was feeling stress.
I guess being queen wasn't all
No, it's a tough job.
sunshine and roses.
It's not easy.
Right.
It's a lot of pressure.
And all those pressures
Yeah.
just intensified
Yeah.
as events unfolded,
Uh-huh.
ultimately leading to her downfall.
And that's where things get really dramatic.
Okay, so what exactly triggered her arrest?
It all started with a rumor
Okay.
about Catherine's past relationship with Francis Dereham.
Oh, Dereham.
Remember him?
Yeah, he's back.
To haunt her.
He comes back to haunt her.
So did this rumor have any merit? Well, that's the question, isn't it?
Was Catherine's marriage to Henry,
Right.
like, actually invalid?
That is the question.
Hmm.
It's a little complicated.
Okay.
Russell doesn't think that there was a formal pre-contract,
Okay.
like a promise ring today,
Right.
but with much higher stakes.
Much higher.
However, there is evidence that Catherine Dereham had a physical relationship and even discussed marriage.
Which, in Tudor England,
Right.
could be enough
Oh, yeah.
to raise serious questions
Definitely.
about her marriage to the king,
Especially to Henry VIII.
especially to Henry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to make matters worse,
Oh, no.
as Catherine is, panicking about this whole Dereham situation,
Yeah.
she makes a crucial mistake.
What did she do?
She brings up the name of Thomas Culpeper.
Her old flame.
Yes.
Why would she do that?
Well, it seems she was trying to downplay the significance of her relationship with Dereham
Okay.
by claiming that he was just jealous of Culpeper.
Oh, so like a little bit of
Yeah. A little misdirection. maybe?
misdirection to throw them off the scent.
Exactly.
But it backfired.
Right.
Because now
Now they're suspicious.
they're suspicious about Culpeper.
But how about Culpeper?
Right. And once they started digging into that relationship,
Whoa.
things unraveled quickly.
Yeah, they found a love letter
Oh, no.
from Catherine to Culpeper.
Wow.
And even though it's debatable whether they actually rekindled their romance physically,
Okay.
the damage was done.
So, like, even the intention to betray the king
That's enough.
was enough to seal her fate,
It was enough for Henry.
especially for Henry,
He took it very personally.
which, given his track record
Right.
with wives,
Not a good sign.
not a good sign for Catherine.
Not at all.
So what happened next?
Well,
Did they give her a fair trial?
Unfortunately, no. The legal proceedings were
Yeah.
ruthless.
Really ruthless.
The charge against Catherine wasn't even technically treason,
Okay.
because adultery by a queen wasn't a crime at the time.
So they changed the law
They
to
did.
convict her.
They passed legislation
Oh, my God.
specifically defining Catherine's actions as treasonous. And
Mhm.
just to add insult to injury,
What?
they also had to pass a law allowing them to execute the insane
Oh, my goodness.
because one of Catherine's ladies-in-waiting, Lady Rochford,
Okay.
had a mental breakdown amidst the chaos.
Wow. Sounds like Catherine never stood a chance.
It was not looking good for her.
It's hard not to see the injustice of it all.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
So she confessed to her relationship with Durham
She did.
and was executed.
Mm-hmm.
What about Culpeper?
Culpeper also met his end.
Did he face the same fate?
He did.
What?
Though his execution was a bit more gruesome.
Oh.
Initially sentenced to be hanged, drawn, and quartered.
Oh, my gosh.
But Henry, in a moment of, I guess you could call it mercy,
Yeah.
commuted his sentence to beheading.
Well, that's something,
It's something.
I suppose.
Yeah.
But it still shows just how brutal that era was.
It was a different time.
And Russell's account of Catherine's final days
Right.
is really sad.
It is.
He describes her clinging to hope,
Yeah.
even writing a letter to the king expressing remorse.
Hoping for a last-minute reprieve.
But it was all in vain, right?
Tragically, yes.
Yeah.
Catherine Howard was beheaded on February 13th, 1542, at the Tower of London.
Wow.
She was only 19 years old.
It's a story that really makes you think about how easily history can reduce individuals
Right.
to these simple
Yeah.
stereotypes.
It's easy to forget they were real people.
Yeah, and it raises questions about power,
Yeah.
guilt,
Uh-huh.
and what it meant to live
Right.
under a ruler like Henry VIII.
Absolutely. A very powerful king.
Before we wrap up, I want to touch on something we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The reliance on interrogations
Right.
as evidence.
Mm.
Those aren't exactly the most reliable
No.
source of information.
Not really. Especially in such a politically charged environment.
So how do,
Good question.
as modern-day readers of history,
Yeah.
separate fact from fiction?
Right.
How do we navigate these potentially unreliable sources?
It's a challenge that historians face all the time.
Mm.
Russell acknowledges these limitations in his book,
Okay.
but he also argues that by carefully analyzing the sources, looking for patterns,
Okay.
corroboration,
Sure.
considering the context,
Yeah.
we can still gain valuable insights.
So it's about reading between the lines.
Yes.
Being critical of the information presented
Exactly.
and understanding that there are always
Right.
multiple perspectives.
Always multiple sides to the story.
Exactly.
And that's what makes history so fascinating.
It is.
It's not about memorizing names and dates.
Right.
It's about wrestling with complexity,
Yeah.
examining different viewpoints,
Right.
and ultimately drawing our own conclusions.
It's about recognizing that history is messy
Yes.
and nuanced
Mm-hmm.
and often much more interesting than the simplified versions
It's always more complicated
we're presented with.
than it seems.
It really does make you wonder what other stories are out there just waiting to be, re-examined,
Oh, yeah.
seen in a new light.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's a good reminder that history isn't static.
Right.
It's an ongoing conversation,
Hmm.
always evolving,
I like that.
as new evidence comes to light and new perspectives are brought to the table.
Okay, speaking of perspectives,
Yes.
I'm curious about the role of Thomas Cranmer,
Cranmer.
the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Right, the big guy.
Yeah, in Catherine's downfall,
Okay.
Russell describes his interrogations of Catherine as,
Yeah.
well, pretty unsettling,
Yeah. A little bit.
even manipulative at times.
He does. He paints Cranmer in a less favorable light than we usually see him.
So maybe not quite the compassionate religious figure
Right.
we tend to imagine.
Not so much in this case.
It makes you think about the limits of religious authority. Even individuals with good intentions can end up being complicit in systems of oppression.
It's true.
It's a powerful reminder that power, even when it's wielded in the name of faith,
Yeah.
can be a dangerous thing.
It can be used for good or for evil.
And in Catherine's case, that power was used to silence her,
Ultimately, yes.
to erase her side of the story.
To control the narrative.
Which brings us back to that challenge we were talking about before.
That's okay.
How do we interpret historical sources,
Right.
especially when they're shaped by the people in power?
You have to be so careful.
Yeah.
You have to be aware of the inherent biases in the historical narrative.
Okay.
Because what's recorded
Right.
is often just one version of events,
Right.
not necessarily the whole truth.
So a healthy dose of skepticism
Oh, always.
is always a good thing when we're exploring the past.
Absolutely. Question everything.
Exactly.
And that's what makes this deep dive into Catherine Howard's story so fascinating.
It really is.
It's not about simply accepting what we've been told. It's about questioning those assumptions, considering multiple viewpoints,
Right.
and ultimately forming our own conclusions.
Recognizing that history is messy
Oh, it's messy.
and nuanced
Yeah.
and often much more interesting than the simplified versions we're presented with.
It's so much more than just names and dates.
Right.
It's about real people
Yes.
with real lives and struggles and triumphs.
We have to remember that these historical figures,
Yeah.
even the ones who lived centuries ago,
Right.
were real people
They were.
with complex lives,
Uh-huh.
motivations, flaws,
All of it.
and sometimes those flaws can lead to
Oh, yeah.
truly tragic consequences.
They can. Catherine Howard's story is a perfect example of that.
It's a story of resilience,
It is.
of love,
Mm-hmm.
and of the enduring power of human connection.
Even in the face of incredible hardship.
Well said. So after our deep dive, it's clear that Katherine Howard was much more than the good time girl label
Right.
she's often given.
So much more.
She was a complex person,
She was.
caught in the web of Tudor court intrigue,
Uh-huh.
a woman who loved and lost and ultimately paid the ultimate price.
Yes, she did. Her story continues to fascinate us.
It does.
Centuries later, we're still drawn to her.
I know.
Still trying to understand her.
Still debating
Right.
whether she was a victim or if she brought about her own downfall.
It's a question that's still open for debate.
It's like her story is holding up a mirror
I like that.
to our own time.
Yeah.
Like we're still captivated by power,
Of course.
by fame,
Mm-hmm.
by those blurred lines between
Right.
public and private life.
It's a timeless story.
It really is.
And it speaks to the power of history.
Mm.
To connect us to the past, to challenge our assumptions, and to make us think critically about the world we live in.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, it's time to wrap up this deep dive into Katherine Howard.
Okay.
But before we go, we want to leave you with something to ponder.
I'm ready.
We've explored the historical evidence.
We have.
We've challenged the stereotypes.
Yeah.
But ultimately, Katherine Howard's story is
Yeah.
open to interpretation.
It is. It's up to each of us to decide what we believe.
So we ask you,
Yes.
what are your thoughts about Katherine Howard after learning more about her story?
Right.
Was she a victim of circumstance?
Hmm.
Or did she make choices that sealed her fate?
Big questions.
We'd love to hear your perspective.
Share your thoughts with us.
And if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity,
as I'm sure it has.
we encourage you to check out Gareth Russell's biography,
Yes.
Young and Damned and Fair,
Great book.
to further explore the mysteries of Katherine Howard.
It's a fascinating read.
Trust us.
Yeah.
And don't forget to subscribe to the deep dive for more journeys into the depths of history and knowledge.
We'll see you next time.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.